Now in Kazakhstan, former economy minister has been charged with beating his wife to death.
Domestic violence has become a hot-button issue for Kazakhs, with government data showing 1 in 6 women has experienced violence by a male partner.
How did a high-profile murder case in Kazakhstan open a can of worms that no one was ready to face? Saltanat Nukenova's tragic end shocked everyone, revealing a scary story of domestic violence that had been hidden for far too long. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. Saltanat, a name that means triumph in Kazakh, was more than just a name. She was the essence of a young woman who brought light and energy wherever she went. In footage that has surfaced since her tragic death, Saltanat is seen dancing in slow motion, her laughter and joy captured in a moment that now feels bittersweet. She was vibrant, full of life and always ready to embrace the world with open arms. Growing up in Pavlodar, a city near Kazakhstan's border with Russia, Saltanat had a childhood filled with memories that shaped her into the person she became. After finishing school, she moved to Almaty, the former capital, to start a new chapter of her life. It was there that she lived for a while with her older brother, Aytbek, her only sibling. Those days were precious to them both, as Aytbek recalls, helping them form a bond that would grow even stronger into adulthood. Saltanat's passion was astrology, a love that began when she was just 9 years old, sparked by a book gifted to her by her godmother. As she grew older, she turned this passion into a profession, guiding women through their most difficult times, whether it was family issues, marital problems, or struggles with children. Aytbek remembers her not just as his sister, but as someone who was always cheerful, always smiling, and always dreaming. She had big plans, dreams of opening her school of astrology, a place where she could continue to help others. But for all the light and joy she brought into the world, what followed was something that no one, not even her beloved brother, could have anticipated. Saltanat Nukenova's life took a sudden and troubling turn when she crossed paths with Kuandyk Bishimbayev. Aytbek, her older brother, remembers how it all began with an innocent request. Bishimbayev wanted to meet Saltanat. She was hesitant at first, and even refused him initially. But Bishimbayev was persistent, and what followed was a long, obsessive courtship that eventually wore her down. He managed to get her phone number, and soon Saltanat was receiving messages from him, urging her to meet him and dismiss any rumors she might have heard about him. Within just a few months of that first encounter, Saltanat found herself married to Bishimbayev, but the marriage that began with promises quickly turned into something far darker. Aytbek recalls how the issues started almost immediately. Saltanat, once so full of life and joy, began sharing disturbing images with her brother, pictures of bruises that told a story she was struggling to escape. She tried to leave him several times, but each attempt seemed to only tighten the grip Bishimbayev had on her. Aytbek believes that Bishimbayev's control over Saltanat extended beyond physical abuse. He was isolating her, cutting her off from the world she loved. Saltanat, who had once been so passionate about her work as an astrologer, was suddenly forbidden from doing the job that gave her purpose. What began as a relationship quickly spiraled into a nightmare of control and abuse. It was as if Bishimbayev wanted to erase the very essence of who she was. But what was it that kept Saltanat bound to him despite everything? Saltanat Nukenova's life came to a heartbreaking end on November 9, 2023, when she was found dead in a restaurant owned by her husband's relatives. The circumstances surrounding her death revealed a scary reality. She had been subjected to violent abuse by her husband, Kuandyk Bishimbayev. As details of her final moments came out, they painted a horrific picture of the brutality she endured. CCTV footage showed Bishimbayev dragging Saltanat by her hair, punching and kicking her mercilessly. Hours after this savage assault, she tragically succumbed to brain trauma. Saltanat's tragic story became a catalyst for many women in Kazakhstan to break their silence. Her story struck a chord, resonating with countless others who were living similar nightmares behind closed doors. As her story spread, it brought to light the widespread issue of domestic violence in the country, revealing just how many women were suffering in silence.
This trial is significant in that the entire society participates in it, because for the first time in the history of Kazakhstan, both victims and violators agree to a public discussion of all the problems that arise in the family, how violence arises and how it escalates. We have been talking for many years about the need for a separate law on domestic violence, because it has slightly different roots than all other types of violence. It is cynical and it is inherited. And in this regard, I want to say that millions of citizens of Kazakhstan, in principle, are informal jurors at this trial.
Saltanat's death gave rise to a firestorm of public outrage across Kazakhstan. Tens of thousands rallied, demanding tougher measures against domestic violence. The outcry was beyond what anyone had ever witnessed, and the government could no longer look the other way. But the real turning point came during the trial of Bishimbayev, who was a former economy minister, whose fall from grace was broadcast live in front of the entire nation. The trial, widely seen as a test of the president's promise to uphold women's rights, exposed the horrific details of Saltanat's final hours. In court, the world watched as Bishimbayev was confronted with damning evidence that showed him repeatedly attacking Saltanat, dragging her through a room where she later died. Videos recovered from his phone revealed even more disturbing scenes where he insulted and humiliated a visibly bruised and bloodied Saltanat, capturing her final moments of consciousness. Bishimbayev, who had once held a powerful position in the government, now stood accused of murder and torture.
Я, честно говоря, не могу понять, Ваша честь. Сейчас объяснить свое поведение в тот момент. Просто это было желание как-то тоже ответить унижением на унижение.
But as the trial came about, Bishimbayev's defense took a shocking turn. He admitted to beating Saltanat but claimed that some of her injuries were self-inflicted. He denied torturing her or planning her death, insisting that the tragedy was not premeditated. As the court deliberated, the nation held its breath. Would justice truly be served, or would the elite once again escape justice? The trial of Kuandyk Bishimbayev concluded on May 13, 2024 with a verdict. Bishimbayev was found guilty of the brutal torture and murder of Saltanat and was sentenced to 24 years in a maximum security prison. The severity of his crimes, charged under the Criminal Code of Kazakhstan for both torture and murder, has marked him as a dangerous recidivist, further compounded by his previous conviction for large-scale bribery. Remember the rumor he told Saltanat to ignore? This was the rumor, his arrest for bribery. The courtroom was tense as the verdict was read. Bakitsan Baijanov, who was his relative, the second defendant, was sentenced to 4 years in a medium-security colony for concealing the crime.
Силы и удары по лицу, я признаю, нанес побои, но у меня не было мысли, я не считал, что пощечина или может причинить смерть.
Мне не показали, потому что мне с этим жить только ради этого ребенка. Ты убивал ее несколько часов.
As the sentence was delivered, Ayatbek Amangeldi, Saltanat's brother, expressed a sense of closure. This was one of the options we were prepared for, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. In 24 years, he will be 68 years old. It's practically a life sentence. Saltanat's family and their legal team couldn't hold back their tears, overwhelmed by a mix of relief and sorrow. They thanked the jury for their decision, knowing that justice, though delayed, had finally been served for Saltanat. The courtroom drama during Bishimbayev's trial was nothing short of a nightmare. Saltanat's death has exposed how toxic masculinity and victim blaming have long been tolerated in Kazakhstan. But there's been a major shift. The public outcry has been massive, with over 120,000 people signing a petition for change. More than 5,000 appeals were sent to Parliament, leading to the passing of Saltanat's law on April 11th. This new law signed by the president is a big step forward. Still, it's just the beginning. With so many lives affected by domestic violence, it's important to stay vigilant. If you know someone who's suffering, don't look the other way. Offer your support, reach out to local authorities, and connect them with organizations that can help. It's not just about passing laws, it's about making a real difference in people's lives. That wraps up our video for today. If you found this content engaging, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.